Travel Guide, exploring the history of the Great Wall of the role of the British Mandate in shaping the modern Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians is one of the most contentious and deeply rooted conflicts in the world today. Its origins can be traced back to ancient times, but the modern roots of the conflict lie in the turbulent period of the British Mandate over Palestine. In this deep dive, we will explore how British rule from 1917 to 1948 shaped the contours of the conflict and set the stage for the struggles that continue to this day. 1. The historical background. The British Mandate, 1917-1948. To understand the role of the British Mandate, we must first look at the historical context in which it took place. The British Mandate for Palestine was established after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I. The League of Nations, the precursor to the United Nations, granted Britain the mandate to govern much of the former Ottoman territories, including Palestine. This territory was home to a diverse population, consisting of Arabs, Jews, and a variety of smaller communities. The British were tasked with overseeing the development of the region and guiding it towards self-governance. However, this proved to be a difficult and often contradictory undertaking. The Balfour Declaration, a divisive promise. One of the key events that shaped the future conflict was the Balfour Declaration of 1917. In a letter from British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Rothschild, a prominent leader of the British Jewish community, Britain expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This declaration was groundbreaking because, on one hand, it supported the aspirations of Jews for a homeland, but on the other, it promised to protect the rights of the non-Jewish communities in Palestine. The Balfour Declaration created a profound sense of distrust among the Arab population, who had been promised independence by the British in return for their support during World War I against the Ottoman Empire. The Arabs viewed the declaration as a betrayal, as it contradicted the earlier promises made to them. Tensions between Arabs and Jews began to rise, as both communities sought to assert their rights over the land. The British Mandate, a delicate balancing act. During the British Mandate, the British authorities found themselves caught between these competing nationalisms. The Jewish population, fueled by the rise of Zionism, a movement advocating for the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine, grew significantly. At the same time, the Arab population, which had a long history of living in the region, became increasingly resistant to Jewish immigration and the idea of a Jewish state. The British tried to balance these conflicting interests. They allowed Jewish immigration into Palestine, but also imposed restrictions in response to growing Arab opposition. In 1922, the British White Paper limited Jewish immigration to 16,500 people per year, a move designed to appease Arab concerns. However, it was clear that the British were caught in a difficult position, unable to fully satisfy either side for the 1936-1939 Arab Revolt, a turning point. The situation in Palestine began to deteriorate in the 1930s. The growing number of Jewish immigrants, combined with economic instability and land sales to Jewish settlers, led to widespread resentment among the Arab population. In 1936, this frustration exploded into the Arab Revolt, a series of uprisings aimed at ending British rule and halting Jewish immigration. The revolt was brutally suppressed by the British, who imposed harsh measures including mass arrests and executions. However, the revolt highlighted the deep divisions in Palestinian society and exposed the limits of British control. The revolt also marked a turning point in British policy. Faced with increasing violence and instability, the British government began to reconsider its position in the region. The White Paper of 1939, a shift in British policy. In response to the Arab Revolt and the growing pressure from the Jewish community, the British issued the White Paper of 1939. This document significantly altered the British approach to Palestine. It proposed limiting Jewish immigration to 75,000 over the next 5 years and placed severe restrictions on Jewish land purchases. The White Paper angered both Jews and Arabs. The Jewish community felt betrayed, as the British were limiting immigration at a time when Jews were fleeing Nazi persecution in Europe. Meanwhile, the Arab population viewed the White Paper as insufficient, as it did not provide for the establishment of an independent Arab state. The White Paper further exacerbated tensions in Palestine. The Jewish community, particularly the more radical factions, began to adopt more militant methods of resistance, including attacks on British forces. The British, in turn, intensified their crackdown on the Jewish underground movement. World War II and the rise of Jewish militancy. World War II and the Holocaust had a profound impact on the conflict. The genocide of 6 million Jews by Nazi Germany intensified the demand for a Jewish homeland. The British, already stretched thin by the war, found themselves under increasing pressure from the international Jewish community and from Zionist organizations like the Jewish Agency. During and after the war, Jewish resistance to British rule grew. Armed groups such as the Irgun and the Stern Gang carried out attacks on British soldiers and installations. These militant organizations sought to force Britain out of Palestine and create a Jewish state, often resorting to violent tactics. The British, weary from the war and increasingly isolated internationally, began to reconsider their position in Palestine. The situation in the region had become untenable, and Britain was no longer able to maintain control. In 1947, Britain decided to refer the issue of Palestine to the newly established United Nations, the UN Partition Plan, and the end of the British Mandate. The United Nations, in an effort to resolve the conflict, proposed a partition plan in 1947. This plan called for the division of Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem placed under international administration. The Jewish community accepted the plan, as it promised the establishment of a Jewish state, albeit on a smaller portion of the land. The Arab community, however, rejected the plan, as it gave the Jews more land than they felt was just, especially considering the fact that they were the majority population in Palestine. As tensions escalated and violence intensified, the British, unable to maintain order, withdrew from Palestine in 1948. The end of the British Mandate marked a new chapter in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as the State of Israel was declared on May 14, 1948. This declaration led to the First Arab-Israeli War, as neighboring Arab states launched an attack on the newly formed state RDA. The legacy of the British Mandate. The legacy of the British Mandate is still felt in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict today. The borders of the conflict, the political divisions, and the narratives of both Israelis and Palestinians can all be traced back to the decisions made during this period. The British failed to resolve the competing nationalisms in Palestine, and in many ways, their attempts to balance the demands of Jews and Arabs only deepened the conflict. The Balfour Declaration, the White Paper, and the UN Partition Plan are all key moments in the history of the conflict. The British Mandate created a volatile environment in which both Jews and Arabs felt that their national identity and rights were under threat. This sense of insecurity and injustice continues to fuel the conflict. Conclusion: the unfinished business of the Mandate. In conclusion, the British Mandate played a pivotal role in shaping the modern Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The decisions made during this period, whether intentional or unintended, laid the foundation for the divisions that persist to this day. The British were tasked with managing a complex and volatile situation, but their efforts to balance conflicting aspirations ultimately proved inadequate. The legacy of the British Mandate is a reminder that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict did not emerge overnight. It was shaped by decades of political maneuvering, conflicting promises, and external intervention. As we look toward the future, it is important to understand the history that has brought us to this point, and to acknowledge the deep-rooted grievances that continue to drive the conflict. If you found this content insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more in-depth analyses of historical events and their lasting impacts on the world today. Thank you for watching.